welcome to Joseph's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe to any of my videos. I just put them out there where I can and have a holly jolly great time doing so. Now, if I seem super excited in this video, it's because I am, because it is take 2 of this particular situation. We are, of course, talking about signal gantries. And if we just take a quick look at this here, ta-da, and welcome to Joseph's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much. I realise that you're probably watching this video and it is far from Christmas at the moment. It's been and gone and you're already... Oh, absolutely fantastic. Of course. You will see that in the previous year, my signal gantries arrived just before Christmas, ready to be put in. But ask any of my family members who will have a damn good chuckle when I talk about my luck with wiring up the signals. These gantries are something I've been waiting for since the 80s. As soon as I saw that glowing image in the Hornby magazine of the flares on the signal that they used in the brochure, I said, I just love the red and greens, whether it be in real life or whether it be in the model world. And adding signals, as we've discovered, can be exceptionally simple, since I'm just wiring them directly to the point. And as we'll look in some further videos down the track, the logic to how it all works. But this is basically a part 1. We're also going to see some other signal gantries in part 2, and a third surprise I have for you coming up a little later on. They're all going to be covered in pretty much the next month or so expect to get signaled out, but it's very important. So yes, the first signal gantries that we received, there are 3 of them. This one I started weathering a little bit, the rest are in a grey from memory. Will be for sale shortly. I'm going to list them accordingly. If people are interested, just drop me a message in the comment, and once I sort of get the listings live, probably on eBay I imagine, I'll make a reference to them there. So if you're interested, I'll certainly reply back to you and let you know about that. But just so you know, this is what we've gone for. It's to span across 3 tracks. There are 3 of these. You might only need 1. I actually only needed 2. Long story with the 3, we won't get into it, but originally 2 are always going to be for the main feature section, and the third one I thought I was going to be using here at Noodle Knocker Junction. I didn't. I went down a different avenue. So I've ended up with 2, and while they still span 3 tracks, it's just a little bit smaller. In fact, if the legs were here and here, that's basically what I've ended up with, and it works well. So for those of you that are interested, these are the original ones. It's all pre-wired LED. You just plug it into a 9-volt battery, as you can see in some footage here, and away you go. And the signals are just your standard red-green LEDs, and they're wired back to back. In other words, if this one is green, the one on facing me will be red. If this one was facing you red, the other side facing me is green, vice versa. So it's nice because really the train's running one way and or the other way. So hence why I wired them up in that situation. So they're all done, ready to go, boxed and ready to be sent out. So we've got the right signals today. So really quickly, I want to talk to you about the process I did for basically just adding a little bit of color, weathering, personalization, and dropping them into place at the moment. I have just done a little bit of ballasting just around the base, but the scenes where they're sitting are still far from being completed. But they are wired, operational, and we can have a wonderful look at my signal gantries in action. So let's check out that build process. Inspiration, of course, as always, we do our research, but unfortunately what I'm looking for doesn't exist anymore. And that was actually an overhead gantry to a point that splits off on the Whyalla to Iron Knob line. That's a privatized line that they use for the steelworks, for getting the iron ore to the steelworks, about 50 kilometers in length. But pretty much 2/3 down the way, or 3/4 of the line actually, there is a point that splits off and was heading off to Iron Baron, now Iron Duke, but basically to the other operation down there that they can use. And from memory, I'm quite certain that there was actually a little gantry that went over that just basically, and it was just a single point, but clearly indicated which way the train needed to go. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. However, as always, I sent my brother John out onto the road, who was traveling in that direction for work, and managed to just quickly pop past and stop on a lunch break and get a couple of quick shots for us, up to and including this marvelous little work trolley that is used. That actually, I have one of the Wickham trolleys that I actually picked up earlier in the year, which is just kind of ironic. As soon as I saw it, I said, I have one of those. So we're going to come back and investigate that a little bit later. So tremendous shots here from South Australia. So thank you very much to that. So pretty much the thing is, as I grew up and traveled over some sections of roadway, you would certainly see the signals, especially the very early morning or at evening. You would see those beautiful glows of reds and greens traveling across that beautiful steel ribbon that is, of course, the rail. And I wanted to keep it nice and practical here. My thinking toward them is that, as we'll see in part 2, I have spent a bit of time focusing on keeping the gantries looking a bit more modern, the silver galvanized sort of look that's not sort of rusting. These ones are weathered that look slightly a bit more rusted, like the steel or the ironwork has just started to go, because these may have been gantries that were there pre our electric ones, where we may have seen some semaphore signals operating, and the engineers came along saying, we'll take the semaphores down, but these gantries are still solid, so we'll just mount up the lighting as required. That's going to become very important in part 3, where we are creating an entire scene going down the path of installing electrified, more modern signals. And we'll see more of that to do with the actual ground crew on the ground working on it and the scene I've got to develop there. So our new gantries have arrived, and this looks pretty good to me. Remember, here is our old one, which, while it is technically correct with the 3 lines, it wasn't quite working in this situation since we're not having it further down, which would be applicable. That's why they're for sale, and anyone interested, these would be good for you. In my instance, it is indicating 3 lines, but the gantries are being placed just before the lines open up accordingly. Now again, I did a little bit of weathering, started to do weathering until I realized that we're not going to proceed with these, and I've put them aside. So there'll be 3 for sale. We're going to have one that is partially weathered like this, and the others are pristine in the box. So we have 2 of these, and I guess the important thing is, just which we'll go into detail with shortly, is that these are red and green LEDs. So how it's wired up though is, if this is red, this side will be green, and vice versa. So they're literally just linked together. There's no crazy science in it. And the whole idea is, if the point's being thrown where this was green in this direction, but you've switched the point to go in this direction, this obviously has to be red, making this one green. And appropriately, the signals would be managed accordingly and wired straight to the point. As you can see, if we come in nice and close, it's quite simple. I didn't want anything too over the top here. Very industrial and reminiscent of what you would see. And side by side, we can clearly see the difference. I must say, I do miss a little bit of the detail in the ironwork up here, but I did want something clean and simple and not over the top, which is exactly what we've achieved. It's clean, it's tidy, but most importantly, this color is just not working out at all for me. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a bit of Play-Doh, cover up the searchlights, give it a spray and galv, and then we'll start weathering accordingly. 2 of these to do, remember? Right, lovely, warm, sunny day. Going to use our zinc coating. We're going to use some Play-Doh here just to cover up the black on those searchlights, and we'll give them a light dusting and see how we get on. Okay, so we're all prepped up. We just take a blob and put it on there. We can always tidy up if there's any extra that's needed in places, just with a dab of black paint. I think we should get a reasonable result out of this. And careful when you're doing it, we don't want to paint too much of the wire. We still want to know what is what, but the paint scrapes off that if necessary. Let's give it a little dust and see how we go. Now that's just a light coating. I just wanted to point out, I didn't go too heavy into areas. You can probably see across the top here, you can still see a little bit of the brown coming through. I did that because obviously we're going to go over it to create it to look a little bit rusty in areas with our weathering powders. But this is a nice step, since we don't have to go too deep and we can let half of the work be done for us. but we'll give them a moment to dry. So as you can see, I'm just taking some pictures because I'm going to be on selling this at the moment. But here are the original ones, and you're correct. 1 line, 2 line, 3 line. This would look quite good, but it's just not going to fit in my application. And as you can see, and I apologize if I said it earlier, these are actually just wired directly back to back. So if this is green on this side, it's green on that side, red, red, green, green, and vice versa. Whereas the additional ones we've had made actually have, we can customize them in any way. So these have been soldered across the top. These ones are all just individual LEDs. So I'm quite happy with those, and I just wish I had a bit more room somewhere on the layout to repurpose these, because they are a wonderful addition to have. So there are 3 of these in total for those of you that may be interested, because I'll give it a little bit before I actually list them onto a site like eBay or something like that to sell them. In case someone directly spots them and says I might be interested, just get in touch with me. So we've returned from where we gave them a lick of paint. And as you can see, where we've given them a lick of paint, we haven't got them all perfect, which was kind of the idea. So if we come in a little bit closer now, you'll see here is our Play-Doh that we can now slide off. Again, the best thing is to remove it when it's a little bit cooler rather than hot. I put it on hot, and as you can see, that was where I put it on warm, and I've got a little bit there that I'll need to just get off with a toothpick. But the point was, it did keep the background of these searchlights nice and black. So I'm very happy with that result. But if we have a bit of a closer look, the overall initial spray wasn't bad. Yes, we're going to come over and touch it up with additional paints across the rail, and we're going to come in with the rust. And of course, if we come in and have a look now, you'll quite clearly see the brown that's still there in bits that we didn't get. Now, you're not really seeing that when it's on the layout. That's why I'm not getting too worried about it any more than on. If we come over here to the insides of the ladder, you can certainly see the bit that didn't. But again, this is where we're going to come with the sponge and dab along to give it that more rusted appearance. So all in all, a quick spray with that Galv spray, I think, is giving the appearance we need. You can see that nice sort of texture already coming through. If I didn't do any further weathering, that's already starting to look quite the business. Well, the next thing is we better just check that it works before we carry on weathering. It doesn't really matter which way we put this at the moment. We do know that they're going to go roughly where we've left these green push pins. But just for the sake of the test here, we'll just lean it back up over here. But you can see I'm getting a better representation for the small space that we're in. And let's hope that's going to stay like that. That'll do. This pin will keep it in place for now. Now, unlike the other ones, they are not all soldered directly back to back at the moment, meaning we end up with quite a few extra cords, but not in a bad way. As mentioned, I wanted to set this up so when one is red, the other one is green, since if the points flick this way to allow it to come down into this siding here, then this line is green, meaning this one has to be red. It can't go any other way. But of course, then it would mean on this side, this signal has to indicate it's red. No one can go that way. So this is the point. My trains can run in either direction on either line, so we can customize accordingly. So just to achieve the result we're after, you can see on this particular signal, we've got the red and the greens, and they've literally just been bound together and swapped over. In other words, as we apply a little bit of power now, you will see that we have red. And if I put my hand down in the back, you should be able to see a glow of green. Of course, the simple fact is, if this was wired up to the point, which we're planning on doing, the reverse situation is if the point were to get thrown in the opposite direction, the result could end up like this, green, and on the back, you can probably see faintly a bit of red. Well, the good thing about that is, especially where there's this single slip here, this one becomes a little more complicated. At the other end, it's a little clearer. It's the 3 lines, and it's very, very simple. So we'll have no trouble up there. This one's a little bit different, but not in a bad way. And all we have to do is plug the according LEDs into whichever throw of the point we need to get the result. So knowing that our lights do indeed work, And as we move over to the other half and just temporarily wire them up, we can see it's working. Where it is red here, it's green on the back, and vice versa. You can probably just see the reflection on my ring there of seeing the red here and the green over there, which we can, of course, control the light output a little later on. The important thing is, electronically, it's all working well. Let's start now with the weathering and getting these things into position. So here is our footprint of where the other gantry is, and just before we carry on and I finish shooting that last shot there, looking up the line where I've just temporarily got it wired up, you can see that really does look quite fantastic, and the result I'm chasing here, I really have a soft spot for these gantries. Let's carry on. No genuine science in this. Just hack out the ballast you've got. We'll fix it up later. Step one, before we weather them, particularly with this one here, if we just look at the scene it's going to be placed into, your pedestrians come across to visit a Christmas tree, but you'll notice it's this side here we have an access ladder. We also have one over here. You don't want the kids running up here getting into some trouble. So what we're going to do is try and build a little bit of an access panel to close this half of the stair off. So let's start with there and see what we come up with. Okay, so I thought maybe we could make these little personalised custom access panels, and all we did is take a little sheet of cardboard there and cut it to size. I took just a basic pin and then just pushed it in to create the rivets to the other side. Just took a resistor there and bent it into shape, and that's how we've created the little handles for it. Of course, we're just going to check after we've as you can see now, just another drop of glue, and I think these turned out all right, considering it's just a little sheet of cardboard and offcuts that we had. So that's basically my little access panels to stop the little ones from climbing up onto the gantry at Christmas time when they're around the Christmas tree. Now we need to get it cut out to fit into this. Now there's always been this section measured out, as you saw in the earlier shot there. So this is going to be pretty tricky actually getting this bit open. But this one's taken me quite some time, so much so I ran out of storage on the device while filming it. So I'm now going to suck it up after literally getting a blister on my hand to see what we've come up with here and how much we still need to do. With our site, just quickly suck this up with the vacuum cleaner now, give it a big clean out. And of course we're going to do the same on the other side as well. You can see we've excavated that ballast nicely. Just a little bit of paint and some, just mask it up, and as you can see we've just painted the bottom there with some white. That's going to be down near the signal box end, and we've also taped it around, and we've just painted the tops with a little bit of safety yellow, which is a bit more of a sign of the times as we came into the more sort of 80s, as we started making things look a little more presentable. Now we'd see a lot more yellow, and a lovely reveal here as the tape comes off. Now just a bit of weathering we're going to apply. We've talked about this in previous videos, and sorry I didn't have the camera in the right angle there unfortunately, but they've been covered in the video. Just check out the one regarding the backhoe, and also where we did do our bridge girder up there. Now here are panels that have been weathered on, just a light little bit of rust there and a bit of weathering. Remember, these would have been supporting our original semaphore signals, and the rail crew decided to leave the gantry, and we'll put in some electronic ones there, some electric based signals. Now of course we've got to make sure it is lined up. We've got to keep it nice and straight. And just a quick rudimentary diagram in the diary as I was trying to figure out how they'd need to be wired up for this particular application. And now we commence the wire up. I'm not going to film this bit because it's really not much to see, but just before we commence, we've just laid our foundation down. The penetration point here and here for the signal gantry where the wires will drop down. the 2-point motors. Remember, there is a third one for the crossing, which is just located on the other side there. We don't need to worry about that because we've mirrored those 2 points. So as one changes, the other one does. So we just need to worry about wiring off to this one and it'll replicate. So we just worry about these two. So as you can just see in this rather simple look here, what we've done, just put a couple of cable ties mounted up here where we're going to feed it. So we're going to feed our red, green and black, remembering coming directly out of the frog, which I'm not using, is where we will take our common cable and we put a diode on that, which I usually just stick straight in there, and just make sure that that silver band on the diode is facing going out to your resistor. That's going to be our positive or common feed. And then of course we have red to red and green comes out of the black. I know it's a bit of a howdy doody. And from there you can see the cables will route from here to here. We tiptoe nicely around and we'll come in here. So we'll have black, green, red, and vice versa. On this route we'll come out, feed in here, and we come into black, green, red. That way we just have to have the signal wires drop down and we can plug them in. And if we're not happy with one being red and one being green or vice versa, we just swap them around here. So you just have to push down and pull the resistor in and out since they have been pre-wired on those gantries. So I'll carry on. Now, is soldering the diode to your stretch of cable really important? Well, I'm going to say yes. First of all, it's been soldered with a little dip of heat shrink. Remember, it plugs into the frog, and typically frogs are green with the wiring. We're going to use black because we're already using black and red for the system. So I think it's just a neat little way to get around this. And I suppose more importantly, we're just going to stick this other end of the diode directly into the actual frog polarity section of our point motor. So I think it's an elegant way to go, and okay, it takes an extra few minutes to do, but I think anyone that watches the channel knows I like to get this done properly. That's why I'd also like to point out that when you see all the cable supports that hold them, you'll notice they're all screwed in and held in place, where there are plenty of products from DCC Concepts and others that will be sort of an adhesive or whatever. Well, that's terrible using it on a timber with its oils and the rest, and they all fall off. So I'm sorry I don't do that. Yes, it takes longer to screw things, but I know if there's an earthquake of maybe 2 or 3 magnitude, this should all still hold up. Although I think we've got bigger things to worry about. LOL. See, everything's nicely done now, wired up to those 2 points accordingly. So that's looking good for the north side. As we come down to the south side, you'll see I've just prepped the cables up to the appropriate lengths. And of course, we've soldered our diode on. Just remember, the diode band needs to face off to the LED. And if we come over now to the south side, you can see here are the penetrations with the holes left and right. And of course, here will be the feeders that we're just working on at the moment. And the cable management has just gone in. So now we're going to slide those cables up and into position. Of course, we're covering 3-point motors on this one. That's why there's an additional bank, 5, 6, and 9 to get the results we need. Because remember, these two are controlling the double slip up top. And then a slightly longer length of wire to come back to point number 5. So a quick update as we conclude another day, and you'll see that we do have 5, 6, and 9 wired accordingly, right next to the penetration with the 2 holes. Point motor number 9, number 6, and you can literally see where the feed for the points come in, and then the piggybacks for the signal, and of course the triggering from the frog polarity pop out. And of course, we've done our best to try and keep it reasonably clean and organized for where they all need to travel to, including the sneaky one that travels back to the other side of the board here over to number 5. So now all we need to do is drop the gantries in and plug them in, and we'll know if they need to be red or green, because we just need to swap the red and green wires as needed.
This is Blow Up Radio, broadcasting the best music all over London. Wait, there's more.
So we've just got our signal gantries into place now, and we've just wired them up the way they need to be. One thing I've just forgotten to do here, and I do apologise of course, is that the LEDs can be sometimes a little bit too bright. So much so, if we come over to one of the ground signal ones that I need down near the petroleum depot, you can see that is exceptionally bright. Now, the way to correct how bright that is, and you can see the spill of excess light on it, is you just simply need to take a paintbrush, and what I'm actually dipping into it is just our standard PVA glue that we use for pretty much everything on the layout. So we're not diluting it down. As you can see, I've just decanted some. I've actually done all of the signals at the moment. But basically, the trick that I find works really, really well is to load some up onto your brush, bring it over to the LED, and what I find is take the majority of the blob you have and just work up toward the top of the hood of it. The reason is the LEDs are usually pretty warm, and that's going to start to flow down accordingly. It dries clear, so you can't really go too wrong with it at the moment. This one is particularly bright. We may need to look at chucking a different resistor on. Of course, we can build up coats as well as we carry on with the procedure. But you can see, after doing it, we have softened it down enough that we can at least see the signal in shot now. But there's still quite a substantial amount of light bleed. I'll come back over that one again.
Bad news for London. Car crime has increased recently. Good news for London. This record will be available shortly. Enjoy!
This one's for London. It's a London theme out on Beat.
Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, that's going to do it for yet another video. Now, I'm sure this has now given you the ability to wet your whistle on a taste for the fun we can have with red and green signals. Again, we've got a part 2 coming up to look at what we're doing with something else. But as always, that is going to conclude it. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining me in seeing what I will have to agree saying is the absolute biggest feature I wanted to see on the layout. There are lots of interesting and fun things we've been doing. I mean, the cricket field, the radio control track, it's all a bunch of fun. But nothing is more the signature on this layout than I needed to see than having those particular gantries in place. And I just think they look absolutely fantastic. So plenty more with signals still to come, so rest assured. In the meantime though, please do stay safe and I will certainly look forward to seeing you in the next one. Toodles!